Power, but I have an opportunity to see and benchmark a lot of other U.S. corporations with their diversity initiatives. I know our journey at Georgia Power, and I'll share our representation numbers a little bit later on. Very reasonable when you look at African American men and women. Very reasonable for women. And in an industry that 40% of our workforce is craft labor. We're a construction company. We build plants, distribution, transmission lines. And right now, our population, our employee population for Chinese American, Asian Americans is less than 1%. And it's taken us 125 years to get a representation for African Americans to what it is. Corporate America, I see the same. It's almost like there's an invisibility to the Chinese, Asian Americans in diversity initiatives. Even though we talk a lot about people of color, there's really is a lumping for everyone in this room that you're being put into a category that I don't think it really defines who you are. And so as diversity professionals, I really see a gap in understanding what are the challenges that you have that are different than other human dimensions of diversity. I see very few Chinese, Asian, American diversity officers. So, there will be exceptions to companies like IBM, and maybe that there are other global companies that would have a more than 1% representation. But Sashi, quite honestly, no. There's not a significant tipping point, critical mass for Asian Americans, Chinese Americans to crack the ranks of corporate America. But that's the challenge that we're going to have to overcome. And it's really interesting hearing your bio, the fact that you're third generation. Maybe you're probably more generation here than my family. I don't know if we're even 3 generations being in this country, which is really, but that's the bias, because the bias is that you haven't been here long. The fact that you're a first, I don't think I've ever been a first of anything. I mean, I'm just part of the norm. So at some point, and this idea of rights, I've never had to think that if I didn't do something right, or I had this fear, I had to look over my shoulder, that I was going back somewhere, because I don't know what that experience would be like. So I think those are indications of a culture and of a bias that is preventing all of you who are in this room and the affinity that you represent in this country from being more successful, because you're spending too much time and effort in getting others to understand the talents that you have, instead of making someone comfortable. And so I think that's part of what we're going to have to do in corporate America, is to change the ability of management to understand the ability that you have, and don't let our biases prevent you from being successful. And I'll say more and more about that.
What about AT&T and UPS? Do you know figures about some Asian statistics that you can give us as far as top management level?
I don't know the numbers, and I just looked at Norman to see if he did, but I would hazard to guess that it's not very high. And in terms of senior management, like reporting to the CEO, I don't know that we have any direct reports to the CEO who are Asian American.
What I would say about UPS is that at a supervisor and manager level, we represent the nation in terms of our percent to the population. Okay. However, when you get into the upper management ranks, that's where we're underrepresented, and we have no Asian Americans that really report to our executive management ranks, with the exception of probably myself.
If I can add that, Ron. let me be more specific. The Georgia Power overall's population, 27% of our overall population, and I'm going to use the term, broad term, minority. For females, 23%, so 27, 23. For level 7 and above, which is a mid-level manager's position, minority representation is 17%, women 20%. For officers, we have 30 officers in the company. Minority representation is 20%, females 24%, and for our board of directors, it's 27%. But in that representation, no Asian American, Chinese Americans, very few Hispanic Latinos, and the majority of that is African American representation.
Would either Ron or Bettina like to add? You don't know any more statistics, so let me move to the second part of that question. It said, if not, why not? We've talked about maybe we'll get to that, but do you think, because we're talking about corporate culture, but what about Asian culture? I know that in my family, we were taught to be very humble. You know, if you do a good job, they'll notice you, that type of thing. But in corporate America, really, that's not always true. You have to get out there, you have to be aggressive enough and speak up. So do you think, Ron and Bettina, this could be part of the reason that we're not getting the numbers, that we're not hitting the upper level management levels?
I'm just going to reference back to the mentorship program that we're rolling out with OCA. Through this mentorship program, it's really designed to help develop those softer skill sets. Just because you happen to be a good worker, a good taskmaster, doesn't necessarily make you a good supervisor, manager, or leader. There are different skill sets that are required for each one of those. The networking, the negotiation skills, everything that we talked about at this morning's meeting and what we've done over the course of the last 3 months are all part of the skill building sessions that go as part of what leaders need to get recognized and developed through corporations. Without you doing that, it's very difficult for corporations. I mean, UPS is a company that has about 420,000 employees, of which about 30,000 of those are management employees. So what differentiates one individual from another individual? And for the same reasons that Sachi had just talked about, being humble, you know, and I use this term all the time at UPS, and I would imagine everybody has heard this at one point or another, but if you don't understand the term or the phrase, the nail that sticks out gets hammered down, really doesn't understand the Asian culture. And so when I talk to people at UPS, I make that statement, they look at me with blank faces, and I said, that's the problem. And that is one of the reasons why we need to have an affinity group, all right? Because the Asians just will not say, hey, look at me, I want to go ahead, I deserve to get promoted for one reason or another. They're waiting for, just like Sachi had mentioned, their parents to come to them or their bosses to come to them and recognize them for their achievements. And if they don't, they're taught just to leave. If it doesn't work, leave. So we at UPS have recognized this. UPS is a very numbers-driven organization. We do take a look at a broad swath of our representation across all minority groups. And what we have noticed is higher turnover with our Asian ranks. Okay, we have no problems attracting Asians. The problem we have is retaining and developing them, and then promoting them into upper management. And hopefully through this program with OCA and some of the other programs that we're trying to roll out at UPS with some assistance from myself, that we're able to go ahead and accomplish that.